Okay, so I believe we are now live, and it's 1 minute early, so that's not too bad. British punctuality united with American punctuality in this case. Okay, just turn the volume down there. So yeah, so it's 6 o'clock exactly in Spain, 6 p.m. I really appreciate all of you who have turned up, especially those who are up and kicking at 8 a.m. as Philip is. And yeah, so thanks for taking the time out of your day to join us. I won't keep you longer here. For those of you who don't know, my name's Nathan Powell, and I'm the founder of Nushi. And Nushi is a proposal software for creative businesses. And today we're lucky enough to talk to Philip Morgan about how to better position yourself as a specialist and therefore deliver more value to your clients. Philip's been working on this for quite some time now, and is actually author of a book along the same lines, which I'm sure he will let you know about in due course. So I won't keep you any longer. Just bear in mind that after Philip's finished his presentation, we're going to open the floor up to questions. I'm sure you'll have plenty of questions, plenty of things you'd want to ask about. So just you can either just drop them in the chat room there below, or just save them until Philip is finished, and he'll be more than happy to jump on those for you. So I'll hand you straight over to Philip now, and let him introduce himself. I'm sure he'll do a better job than I will. So over to you, Philip.
Thanks, Nathan. That intro was actually fine. Right now I'm setting a timer for 30 minutes because I'm so interested in leaving plenty of time for questions, and the concepts we're going to deal with are actually quite simple. So I think we'll either have lots of interesting questions or a few questions and a short presentation, either of which will be fine. Happy to be here. Again, as Nathan mentioned, my name is Philip Morgan, and my primary focus for a couple of years now has been working with freelancers and small agencies, primarily on the technical side of things, to help them deliver more value to their clients by specializing their business. That also has a lot of secondary beneficial effects in terms of things like making your marketing more effective and easier to implement, and reducing the cost of acquiring new clients. So I wanted to cover the basics of positioning and talk about just the most simple way to understand that concept, some ideas for taking advantage of the concept to make your business better, and some ways to reduce the risk, because although for a lot of people the status quo is not something they're entirely happy with, any change to your business introduces risk, and I think it's important to talk about ways to mitigate that risk. So here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to share my screen, so we'll probably have infinite Nathans for a moment until I switch over to my slide deck, and let's do this. So here's the sort of central paradox at the heart of the idea of positioning, which is a concept that's been around for quite a while. It's not a brand new concept. It's not something I invented. It is simply the application of the idea of positioning to services is somewhat unique. Most of the books that you'll find out there, most of the content that you can find about this idea applies to things like products, which is great, but the same concept applies to your services. And I sum up this idea by saying the smaller your focus for your services, for your business, the bigger it is. The bigger the result you get, the greater the value you can deliver to your clients. So the smaller your focus, the bigger it is. And I realize that's a bit of a paradox, so I'd like to describe why that is, why that's so. So this is the picture I've come up with that I think best describes the idea of positioning yourself as a specialist. There's a whole range of things that you can do, which are represented by that green circle on the right. Every freelancer I know, every small agency every large agency has a wide variety of stuff they can do, results they can create for clients, skills they possess, interests they have. And so that's why that circle's rather large. Likewise, your clients tend to have a range of needs for which they would hire a freelancer, an agency, they would hire outside help. They have all kinds of things they need, ranging from they need somebody to, clean the office and take out the trash, all the way up to much more valuable things. And so that's that yellow circle on the left. There is a subset of the things your clients need that they will pay a premium rate for in almost any case. Of course, there's exceptions to this. Of course, there are clients who are very, value, price sensitive, or who only buy based on value. But most clients, there is a range of importance that they assign to various, things that they hire outside help for, and a subset of the sum total of what they need, they will pay top dollar for. And I find that for most freelancers, small agencies, etc., most people like you, there is some kind of overlap between things that you could do and things that clients will pay top dollar for. So that's that little red circle in the middle. And that is your ideal market position. From a business perspective, if you can find that overlap, that sort of sweet spot between things clients need, things they'll pay top dollar for, and things you could do, you will have a lot easier time selling your services. You'll be able to charge more. And the reason that you'll be able to do those things is you'll be delivering more value to clients. Now, I wish it was really that simple in practice. The part that's not easy about it is where that red dot is slightly different for every person. So you really have to know your clients fairly well. You have to know yourself fairly well. And you have to do some research usually, and some introspection into your own interests and skills to really find where that red spot is, that red circle is for you, your business, and your clients. But I think it's worth it because it dramatically changes a relationship, both, the power relationship and the value relationship between you and your clients, if you can find where that red circle is. So again, that's your ideal market position. And what you want to do as a part of positioning your business is to become well known for doing whatever it is that red circle represents. Now, the concern that usually comes up when people say, yeah, I love this idea of charging more and delivering more value, the immediate concern that comes up is there's all kinds of other stuff that you could be doing that's represented by that green circle on the right. And it requires a certain amount of discipline and focus to focus your marketing on just the red circle. What happens is people say, yeah, but I can do all these other things. And I really enjoy doing those other things. Those other things are fun. They're enjoyable. They provide diversity in my day-to-day routine. They keep things interesting, and they keep me from getting bored. I get that. I understand that. I'm the same way, in that I don't want to have a boring job any more than I think any other self-employed person does. What I'm talking about is focusing your marketing on that red circle. I promise you will still get to do other fun things, even if you focus your marketing down in a very narrow, singular way on that red circle. The reason you'll get to do other things is clients will ask for them anyway. Existing clients will come to know you better and understand that you have additional capabilities that you did not really talk about in your marketing. In fact, you can intentionally not talk about those things, continue to do them, and introduce them to clients once you have a relationship where they trust you, and you can still get to do those things even on a paid basis. So I promise you'll get to do other fun stuff, even if you narrow down your marketing to focus on just the most profitable, just the most valuable of your services. Here's the thing, if you don't narrow down your market focus, you will never become well known for doing that one thing that clients really value more than anything. And that will make your marketing more difficult. That will make it more difficult to charge higher rates. You'll get more pushback on proposals, for example, and everything will be more difficult if you do not narrow down your market focus to that single red dot, which is no longer on the screen because I'm showing you that without that focus, clients just don't know how to remember you. They don't know how to recommend you to others. They don't really know how to categorize your business. I would like to pop out of the presentation real quick and show you some examples of some businesses that have done this kind of narrow marketing focus, just so you get some real world examples. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of freelancers who operate in the way that I'm describing, and I just want to look at a few. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I think Nathan will, after the presentation, send out the slide deck I'm using so you can sort of tour these websites in more depth on your own. Podcast Motor is a company that takes the recording that you do when you do a podcast, and they produce it, they upload it to your podcast feed. They do all the sort of hard work for you, and they're focused on self-funded businesses. Wow, highlighting that text did not really highlight it, but you can see right there in their headline, podcast editing and production services for self-funded businesses. That's a great example of having a specific focus on a specific target market. Sorry. Oh, you know what? Why don't I go to the correct presentation? Here's another example. These are friends of mine, Travis and Michael. They have a company called MemberUp, and they are focused. So I'm going to come back to them later and show you sort of the progression that they went through. They started out as generalist WordPress design and development agency, and they're now focused on recurring revenue businesses, basically membership businesses. So companies that charge a fee to give you access to information or some sort of membership community, they're focused on just that one type of client. And here's another example. This company that used to be, or was started and used to be owned by a guy named Brian Castle, now owned by somebody else. They focus on creating websites for restaurants. And not only that, they have an additional focus on fast, inexpensive, standardized websites for restaurants. So it's very clear who their services are for. Not for lawyers, not for banks, not for massage therapists, just for restaurants. And another Brian Castle production, his current company is called Audience Ops. And it's not 100% clear in the headline who his services are for, but if you drill down a little bit, you start to see that he's focused on founders, and all of his testimonials here are from software as a services companies. So that's a pretty good example of a very clear focus. Okay, so just some quick examples of the type of focus that I'm talking about. Now, when I first started talking about positioning, I have to confess I was very dogmatic about the subject and did not really acknowledge that there are other ways to be successful as a freelancer, small agency. And I'm not kidding when I say luck that can really be a factor in success. It takes a lot of businesses quite a ways down the road. It's not 100% reliable. And, there's the saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. So I suppose that's another way to look at luck, is just simply working harder is another way to increase your rates and get better clients. If you have good connections, that can also bring you work at a premium rate. But again, that's not 100% under your control. You can leverage an offshore team. This is more something that's relevant to people who live in a high cost of living area. You can certainly have people in a lower cost of living area, which is usually involves, hiring people who live in another country. And you can leverage an offshore team to build a pretty decent business. And, you can do nothing at all to narrow down your services. And that can work. And the fourth way that really is something you can use that doesn't really depend on narrowing down your focus is you can ride a platform that's crossing the chasm from that sort of early adopter status to mainstream status. So an example that's still fairly current is mobile. Like mobile platforms have just exploded in popularity, and they've really become mainstream platforms. As they do that, the demand for supporting services goes up tremendously, and that usually results in a shortage of supply of people who have skills in that area. And that means that you have, usually a steady supply of work at a nice rate, sometimes a premium rate, just because the skill that's in limited supply. But just know that situation always rectifies itself if they're not artificial barriers to acquiring those skills. And, with something like mobile, there definitely are not any real barriers to acquiring those skills. So people see that, oh, wow, people who understand mobile design or mobile programming are making a killing. I'd like to make a killing too. So I'm going to learn that skill. And over time, that situation changes. So that's also not a very 100% reliable way to increase demand for your services. I think you need to narrow down. I think it's one of the best things you can do for your business. Here's why. Your potential clients are busy. They're overwhelmed with information. And at the end of the day, they're not really there to help you. They're there to help themselves. And by narrowing your services down and becoming well-known for doing one thing or serving one audience, you will become an exact match for their needs. And it will be a lot easier for people to refer you, to recommend you to others. You'll become more discoverable online just as a byproduct of having that narrow focus. And those things will help your business. Your clients are also risk averse. And so the most profitable, difficult, or important projects are ones where they're going to seek out a specialist. And so if you market yourself as a specialist, you become eligible for those more lucrative jobs. Now, here's another thing that happens when you say, okay, this sounds great, Philip. I'm interested in this idea. You may have to shift the focus outside of your comfort zone. So back to our diagram, the stuff you can do is represented by that green circle, but out of the, broad range of things that most talented, skilled freelancers can do, we all have a sort of comfort zone, an area where we're most comfortable. And you may find, and here, let me just interrupt myself and say, how would you find where that red dot is? You would do research, you would talk to your clients, which is I've worked with a lot of people, and I find that simple concept is shocking sometimes to them, because they talk to their clients about the project at hand, but they don't often talk to their clients about the larger business concerns that their clients are facing. So you start talking to your clients about those things. You talk to people who aren't your current clients, but potential clients. And so it's a process of discovering where that red dot is. You may find that red dot is outside your comfort zone. You may have to grow your skills, your businesses, you may have to change staff. You may have to, do a lot of growth-oriented activities. And when I say growth, I'm not talking about revenue growth. I'm talking about more like growth in your skills and your capabilities to move into that sweet spot of things that clients will pay top dollar for. And to be honest, for a lot of people, that's right there. That's a non-starter. They're, if you are just doing freelancing to kind of tide yourself over from one job position to another, you may not be interested in doing that kind of growth. And that's fine. No judgment here. But if you are really interested in getting those premium rates and having an advantage in finding and winning client work, you may have to grow and move outside of your comfort zone. That is a challenge, I'll be honest. But the growth is easier than you probably think, because if you channel your focus into that one area that clients will pay top dollar for, what will happen is you will, over time, this does not happen overnight, but eventually you will redirect the energy that you have been spending on multiple learning curves into your singular area of focus. And as a result, the growth will happen much, much faster. Let me give you a quick example. Back to my friends Travis and Michael. I'm going to show you what their website used to look like. And then I'll show you, or I'll return to showing you what it looks like now. So they changed company names. They were the Bright Agency. Now they're Member Up. And, Member Up is obviously a sort of nod to their focus on membership sites. But if we go back, what is this? Just about 4 years to see what they were doing 4 years ago, they were a generalist, absolutely undistinctive, sorry guys, if you're listening, unremarkable, generalist design agency that could do things like web design, development, logo, identity design, print, digital media. I mean, in a nutshell, that is the sort of generalist agency. And they can still do those things. And in fact, on some projects, they may still do those things. But with their focus, what they did is they looked at their business. They saw that they had some of their better success stories were in the area of membership sites. So they decided to focus on membership sites. And now they have a book on the subject of membership sites. All of their marketing is oriented towards what, for them, that turned out to be their red dot in the center of, of this picture here. They found their red dot. That was membership sites and still is. And so they undertook the growth that it took to become experts in that area. And now they get a ton of business in that niche. And it's, it's had a very beneficial sort of overall result on their sales. So I don't want to spend too long hanging out on their website, but I do want to point you to that as a good example of the kind of growth that can fairly naturally occur over the period of, a year, 2 years, as you choose a focus and start to stick with it. So again, you gain expertise in your narrow focus much quicker if you stop multitasking and having to learn something new every time you take on a new client project. It's not that you will stop learning new things, but your learning will become deeper and more advanced if you have that singular focus. You begin to deliver more business value to your clients when you acquire more expertise. And if you can deliver more value, it becomes much easier to charge more and become more selective about who you work with. Those things are just natural byproducts of delivering more business value. So again, you start working full-time on a very narrow range of problems, and you stop multitasking between a bunch of different types of problems. That makes you better at risk mitigation. And as you start to sort of move up the value chain, you will find more and more that's really what clients are paying for. Yes, they're paying for a result, but they are also paying a premium to get that result with a very low level of risk. Having a narrow focus makes you better at sort of communicating with your clients. You sort of learn their language, you learn how their business works, and that enables you to communicate better and give better advice. And ultimately, you start being viewed more like a partner and less like some person who is easily replaceable, who, we can find another one of them on Upwork or Fiverr or, some market like that. Another benefit of narrowing your focus is it reduces the cost of acquiring a client. That's what that CAC abbreviation stands for. Part of that happens because word of mouth starts to work as you focus on a type of client that you want to serve or a type of problem that you want to solve. Word of mouth just starts to happen way more effectively. Word of mouth is not, people running through the street yelling at the top of their lungs, you have to hire these guys. Word of mouth is more like people going to a conference and, getting asked for a recommendation, or going to a networking group with other people within their industry and being asked, hey, do you know anybody who can solve this problem? Or that's really much more how word of mouth spreads. Your marketing becomes dramatically more effective when you narrow your focus, because instead of it being a disjointed sort of, okay, we're going to write a blog article this week about, this, and then we're going to write a blog article next week about some completely different topic. Your marketing starts to become more cohesive, and it starts to sort of resonate with itself much better. The risk of hiring you becomes much lower because you're perceived to be an expert. And all of that makes it possible for you to capture a leadership position where you are perceived in your market as a leader. And that's a very desirable position to have. Maybe this sounds great to you. Maybe it sounds like a bunch of BS. I don't know. But assuming it sounds great, let's talk about how you might get from a sort of generalist position to this more narrow focused specialist position. There really are three basic ways you can do it. I call these positioning strategies. The first positioning strategy, and I go into this much more in depth in a book that I have on the subject, but for here, we'll just sort of skim the surface and make sure you understand the three different, the sort of high level bullet points of how this works. The first strategy is, I call the narrow focus strategy. That's where you focus. You continue doing exactly what you do now, but you narrow your focus to a single market vertical or a single audience. So just real quickly, if you're not familiar, a market vertical is a way of slicing up a market. So if we think about the market of higher education, there are, universities and schools and colleges. There are 2-year universities and 4-year universities, at least here in the States. That's a common way to differentiate between different types of schools. That's an example of two different market verticals that are in the same market. An audience is different. An audience is really a group of people who have some shared concern or problem or interest. So, fans of a football team would be an audience, or Fortune 500 CEOs are an audience. Fortune 500 CEOs are in all sorts of different market verticals, but they have a shared situation that galvanizes them together into an audience. Just some quick examples of some companies that have implemented the narrow focus strategy. I'll start with my wife. She's an interior designer. She has focused her services on, let me close Skype here. I think somebody else is trying to message me. So she's focused her services on boutique healthcare spaces. That's an example of the narrow focus strategy where she's chosen sort of a market vertical, sort of an audience, a little bit of a hybrid of both. Here's one of my other sort of favorite examples of this. Modern soap making. I interviewed Kenna, who's the founder of this very small company. It's her and her husband. They provide marketing advice and consulting for an audience, which is people who make handmade soap. So that's not really an audience. That's more of a market vertical, a very, very tiny niche that she's been very successful in serving. And part of her success is because she's not just, providing general marketing advice to anybody. She's providing marketing advice specifically to people who make handmade soap. And I've got to go back a ways here because Paul Jarvis has switched his focus more to products. But for a while, he had a pretty clearly defined focus on something that would be much more like an audience, which was, creatives and free. It really was more, I would describe his focus as female entrepreneurs who, sort of embody a certain mentality about doing business. And at least in the services end of his business, that's really who he was focused on, which is kind of a squishy, weird to defined audience. But if you're in that audience, you absolutely know that you're a member of that audience, and you know that if you can hire a web designer, you want to be able to hire somebody like Paul Jarvis. So that's an example of the narrow focus strategy in action. The second strategy you can use, I call the category leadership strategy. And really what you're trying to do is become a leader in your category. And I think this will be best illustrated by a couple of examples. If you are a Fortune 500 company and you are looking for strategic advice on how to price your products so that you make more money, there's, and I'm not a Fortune 500 company, so this is really just going based on some research I've done. There's really just one company you want to look at, which is this company, Simon-Kucher. When you go to their website, their focus is not entirely clear, but they are, as best I can tell, the leader in providing strategic consulting advice on pricing your products. So that's a good example of someone who has had a focus over a long enough period of time and done so aggressively enough that they've been able to become a leader in the market. Here, another example is copy hackers. They have sort of, in my mind anyway, and I think the mind of a lot of people, obtained a leadership position in providing advice on conversion-focused copywriting for startups. Again, not entire. I wish people would own their position a little more on their website. Not entirely clear from their website, but if you're in the startup space, I think you would agree that they're looked at as leaders in that. And another quick example is Pivotal Labs, leaders in the world of agile development. Okay. The third strategy is what I call the category pioneer strategy. And this is one where you define your own category. I'm really sorry we don't have a ton of time to go into this because it's super interesting. But I think this will be best pointed out by an example. And I just have one example because I want to follow this up with a little bit of sort of theoretical explanation of how this works. Another acquaintance of mine, Kurt, runs a agency called EtherCycle, and they have a service called Website Rescues. And the idea is, instead of doing a complete redesign for your website, they will take the existing website you have, make some tweaks to it to optimize its performance. They're focused on e-commerce, so it makes it very easy for them to talk about the financial benefits of doing this rather than designing an entire new website. And that's the service. What they've done is sort of defined a new category that they are the de facto leaders in. And when you take a look at the various attributes of their service and compare that to a traditional agency, you see some clear differences between the website rescue service and how a traditional agency would tend to approach a website project. The price is lower for what Kurt's doing. The speed of delivery is much higher. The level of client involvement is lower because, again, they're not designing something from scratch. It's more of a modification or a tweak. The level of customization that Kurt offers is also lower, and the risk level is lower. So it's not that Website Rescues is better in every way than what a traditional agency does. In fact, if what you care about is, being very involved in a project where everything is customized, then Website Rescues would be an inferior alternative. But it's not inferior when the things you care about are relatively inexpensive, fast delivery at a low risk. Then website rescues becomes actually a very compelling, interesting option for you to look at. And that's really how it works when you define your own category. You start to tweak your service so that it's different than what other people are doing, and it's different in a way that makes it more valuable to a certain type of client. So you narrow the focus of who this service is perfect for, and in doing that, you increase the value of the service. So that's the category pioneer strategy in action. So let's wrap this up. I'm already over my 30-minute limit because I got too excited about the topic. Let's talk about risk. 3 ways that you can lower the risk. And again, I'll just sort of skim the surface of these, and hopefully if they will provoke some questions that we can get into in a moment. Start with the narrow focus strategy. So let me skip back in the presentation and remind you what that is, because I know I went through those pretty quickly. Narrow focus strategy, you keep doing what you're doing now. So maybe you do a sort of generalist design thing. Maybe you design logos and websites and branding and, print. Keep doing all those things, but narrowed it down your focus to a single market vertical or audience. And I can't tell you, I can't make some blanket statement about who that should be, who your singular focus should be. But about 30% of you will just know, automatically you'll be like, I know that my best clients are, are dentists. I know my best clients are Fortune 500 companies. I know my best, most profitable clients are whatever. I'm advising you to focus on just those best clients. Now, if you don't know, if you're really in the majority who say, well, I have all kinds of clients and I love them all, or I have all kinds of clients and I hate every single one of them, or, I have all kinds of clients and they have different, love some and don't like some, but, they all seem good. Then you've got to do some research and you've got to do some, sort of introspection into your business. And, you also have to make a difficult choice. And maybe you have to run a small marketing experiment to sort of see which of those potential areas of focus would be best. But that's the narrow focus strategy. You just pick a target market and you start to go after that target market. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's the lowest risk way that I know of for you to start to narrow down your focus. And that's why I recommend starting with that. The other strategies where you pick a particular problem to focus on, or you sort of design a service that has unique attributes that make it very compelling to a certain type of client, those are more advanced strategies that are more suitable for people who have already focused on a particular target market. The second way to lower risk is to think about the fact that you do not have to become ultra specific all at once. What that means is every business has a sort of curve. I call this the specificity value curve. And increasing the specificity of your focus, basically narrowing your focus more and more, will start to add business value. And then at a certain point, you'll become too narrow, and that will start to reduce the business value that you deliver to clients. This curve looks different for every business. It takes a bit of experimentation and research to figure out what it looks like. It's not an exact thing. This is more of an idea that I'm trying to illustrate for you, that if you add specificity, you will add value up to a point. And so my real point here is go gradually. Just try to add, 1 or 2 additional degrees of specificity to what you do. Pick a target market and start to market to them, very specifically. And then once you've done that, you'll know what the next step is in terms of adding specificity. So really what I'm saying here is don't try to go all the way from wherever you are, kind of on the bottom left, perhaps, of that curve right now. to the maximum. Let yourself take it incrementally, one step at a time. My final recommendation for lowering the risk of this is to talk to clients, or talk to people who are like the clients that you would like to have, who are, meaning who are similar to the clients you like to have. Don't do so in a completely unstructured way. And if I may recommend a book that will help you do this, the book is called Lean Customer Development by Cindy Alvarez. It's meant for people who are developing products, but it's also very useful for people in the world of client services who are trying to figure out ways to sort of narrow down and focus their services to create more value for clients. It's shocking to me how little many of us talk to our clients about things outside the scope of the immediate project we're on. And there's so much value in having those kind of conversations that I really recommend that that's the third thing you do to reduce the risk of doing this, is to have more conversations with your clients. That's it, folks. That is about as much as I can boil down this subject to try to make it easy and simple to understand. I do have a email crash course if you want to learn more about positioning. It's at positioningcrashcourse.com. Again, I think Nathan will probably send out these slides after we're done here. So, Nathan, do we have any questions?
Well, I think we've got, like I said, we've got a little bit of a delay here. So while people catch up with the sound, I've actually got a question myself. That came through earlier this week, especially for folks who are sort of perhaps newer to the world of sort of the self-employment, freelancers, people who are starting up an agency for the first time. How do they make that way? When you're starting a business, you're scared, obviously, to just say, right, I'm starting, and I'm just going to jump into, I'm going to specialize in this.
Yeah.
Do freelancers or do new agencies need to pay their dues, so to speak, or can they just, sort of dive in and say, this is it, this is my specialty?
That's a fantastic question, because it points out how scary this is. And I always like to acknowledge that this is frightening, because you're going to fear that by narrowing down, you're excluding desirable work, and you'll just wonder, is there enough of this kind of work out there for me to make it? So I have to acknowledge that. And I also have to say that for some people, if they just have no experience whatsoever, maybe this is like the first thing they're doing straight out of school, I would say it may be appropriate to sort of pay your dues, like you're saying, to basically operate as a generalist and get any kind of experience you can, so that you have some basis for making that choice of how to narrow down. Now, in a sort of hypothetical perfect world, you would gain all of the advantages I talked about, or you would gain most of them by starting with some sort of specialty from day one. But I, again, have to say it's very difficult to do that if you have never worked with a client. It's very likely you won't even really know how to talk to them, or what to say, or how to reflect their concerns in your marketing content. So you may have to do some research to really be able to do that. So sorry, it's not just a simple yes or no answer, but those are some of the things that you would have to sort of think through.
Okay, great.
There's a lot of things you could do worse than spending a year or two, just as you say, paying your dues and operating as a generalist. That's not the end of the world.
Okay, cool. I see we've got a question in here from Antonis. Philip, I want to elaborate a bit on stepping out of my comfort zone. My audience, or should I say market vertical, is hydrology consultants. I interviewed some of them, and the things they care most about is getting paid fast by their clients, finding clients, improving the handling of deadlines, and so on. In theory, I can't help with such problems. I'm a programmer, not a management consultant. are you saying that I should not be ruling it out?
That's also a really good question. It's what I would do is I think I would recommend more research. It's difficult to understand something in like this kind of research in an absolute sense. It's much easier to understand it when you have other things to compare it against. So, you know, you're starting with this sort of, it's not an assumption, but just a built-in preference, as we all do. We all have some kind of built-in preference for the type of people we would like to work with. Or I've worked a lot with, in Antonis' case, he's worked with hydrology consultants before, or, you know, he has an interest in that, and that's fine. But if that's the only market that you've really researched, then I think it will be difficult for you to interpret the qualitative data that you've gathered without comparing it against another market. And so I might recommend, just, even though it may feel like a waste of time in the short term, I might recommend looking into another market that's different, just to have some basis to compare against what you're hearing from hydrology consultants. Maybe they have no problem that overlaps. Maybe they're, you know, if we go back to that, to those two circles, let's see here. My visual memory is, so, you know, the yellow circle on the left, I'm going to, let's see, can I share my screen? Yeah, let me just share my screen. I think that would be good. So again, in the case of these hydrology consultants, there may be no overlap. And I neglected to mention that there are certainly situations where, you know, the stuff your clients need, and especially the things they'll pay top dollar for, there's no overlap whatsoever with the things you can do now, or even would be possibly interested in doing. And that's fine. That means you need to move on and find a different market to try to serve. But I would at least do some sort of level of research into some other market that's different, just to see, you know, just to have some basis of comparison. So, Antonis, hopefully that's a reasonably good answer. And I know it's maybe not 100% complete, but that's how I might think about that problem.
Okay. One thing I noticed in that question, and it's kind of off with a bit of a tangent, actually. I'm a programmer, not a management consultant. Oftentimes we look at ourselves as such. You know, I'm a designer, or I'm a programmer, and it brings to my mind this sort of image of the technician, as opposed to the sort of the business or the service provider, or the business person, or the person who's going to help move your business forward via X. Is the way you look at yourself and the way you sell yourself and your business, does that also affect the kind of people you can work with, or how you can work with them? For example, so Antonis is saying now that he's a programmer, so he can't help with those issues. But if he was looking at himself as he himself mentioned, as a management consultant, or as someone capable of making those moves, then it might put him in a different position.
Yeah, it's and this is also a big issue for people like myself and other, you know, freelancers. We love our craft, whether that's programming or design or branding or creating logos or whatever it is, right? We really love our craft. And I think you see this in companies where they have come to acknowledge that not everybody is cut out for management. And so, you know, 50 years ago, the growth path in a company would be to get promoted into management, which, you know, resulted in the Peter principle, where people become ineffective managers because they get promoted to the level where they're not effective anymore. And so I think that the path of least resistance is to combine your skill with your craft with some sort of, you know, business some sort of interest in how a business works and ability to talk to business people. When I say business people, I mean, the decision makers in a company.
Mm-hmm.
I realize that not everybody is going to be interested in that path. And some people's, and I've mentored people in this situation where they look at that and they really consider it. And they say, that's not for me. I just want to be the best craftsman I can be. I want to spend the majority or all of my time, developing or designing or whatever it is, right? Or writing. I want to spend all my time writing. And in that case, I think you have to look at a position that's based on expertise, on just raw expertise. And essentially you have to say, I'm going to become the best, whatever it is. And there will be certain limitations in that position. I think ultimately you can go a long way with that, but I think it may be a longer path. And I think you have to sort of prepare yourself for that. And how you market yourself as, the world's best, let's just pick Antonis's example, the world's best hydrology consultant. That's different than saying, well, I'm a hydrology consultant or have a background in the technical end of hydrology consulting, but really I'm here to help you improve your business. Those are two very different ways of marketing yourself, and you just have to realize that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
So I really am not saying there's only one way, but I'm saying there are two different paths that have different requirements.
Okay, cool. And yeah, so if anyone does have a question, just feel free to drop them in there. So I got another one here. You mentioned actually in the slides about having your very narrow focus, which is the red, the red dot, and then the other areas that you also can do and even enjoy working in.
Yeah.
And you said that don't worry, you can, you'll still get to play with those areas. You'll still get to, but can you actually market those other areas as specialities as well, or can you only market one speciality? Can you have your cake and eat it?
Yeah, right. Yes, with some caveats. It becomes difficult to bear in mind that I really primarily work with solo freelancers and small agencies, small development shops. So it is difficult to do the work that it requires to effectively market yourself to more than one target market or more than one different area of expertise. So anytime there is the word "and" in your positioning statement, it's sort of a red flag that you've not narrowed down far enough.
Oh no, sorry, I was actually referring to sort of separate marketing for each specialty. So almost cheating on one specialty with another. So you might have marketing out there for branding, for example, and then have separate content around about the place for whatever
copywriting.
Copywriting, yeah.
Yeah, those are different enough that it would be hard to bring them together and have it make sense that you're an expert both in branding and copywriting. So are you saying, could you have two websites for those, or sort of two business identities, or just at least market them very separately? You
just
could
market them separately, yeah. And just
you could, but it is twice as difficult at least, and it's confusing to prospective clients. Here's what I would say is better, and this is what I mean when I say you sort of can do that. Pick one that is the primary focus. Market only that. Once you have an existing client relationship, introduce your additional capabilities only to your existing clients. They trust you, presumably. They like you, presumably. So they are going to be far more receptive to, oh, we didn't know you did that, but we like you and trust you, so that's not entirely confusing. Mm-hmm. And if the two things are similar enough, then you become a more valuable resource to them. And you can talk to them about ways to, if you started out doing branding work, you can talk to them. You can say, okay, we've done a branding project for you. It's gone well. We want you to know that we also have these other capabilities. Do you have any needs that revolve around copywriting? We already understand your brand very well. We would be great copywriters. So basically, you market that only to existing clients. That would be a way to do both with much less stress than trying to market both simultaneously to the general public. And that's really what I recommend is deciding what's the public face and what is something that you only introduce to existing clients.
And I guess at the same time, as you alluded to as well, to reducing the stress and workload of trying to sort of market to numerous markets and audiences.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, some freelancers get lucky. They don't have to do any marketing. But let's just stick with a freelancer, one person who's doing it all. I think a lot of freelancers find they have to market 20% of the time. Well, that becomes 40% of the time if you're trying to market two businesses, or you're marketing each one with only 10% of the time, which I think reduces the effectiveness. So I think you have to make that difficult decision of what's the one thing you want to focus on, unless you're just have far more energy than most people I know.
Okay, cool, fantastic. Well, if nobody else has any more questions, I think we'll probably start to wrap up. You said you were going to pass on your presentation deck to everyone after we finish.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to sort of mention? Anywhere people can go and find out more apart from your positioning course?
That really is the best place. If you have questions, I think some of those, maybe all of those, will be answered by taking that email course at positioningcrashcourse.com. The other thing is that I love helping people. So if you want to simply email me, I am Philip with one L at philipmorganconsulting.com. That email address is on, I think it's at least one place throughout the slide deck. So if you just want to find it from there, that's fine. I welcome questions from anybody about positioning and would be happy to help any way I can. If you want some additional clarification, just let me know.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Philip.
My pleasure.
Thank you to everyone for turning up today. It's Philip's presentation has been fantastic. So like I said, we'll be sending out an email shortly with a link to watch the presentation again and with Philip's presentation deck. And of course, like you said, any questions you might have, any doubts, drop him a line. I guarantee that Philip will do his very best to help you out. And yeah, thank you very much. And we hope you've had a great hour or so. Like I said, any questions, drop them along to Philip or drop them along to myself, and I'll make sure that they get forwarded to Philip. Okay, have a great day, guys. Bye-bye. Cheers, Philip.
Bye.